Hi everyone, my name is Nancy Liu, and for my 2022 Eureka research project, I studied machine translation. So first, I'll give a brief introduction of myself. I'm a rising senior, I'm in class of 2023, and I live in Bellevue, Washington, and for those of you that don't know, it's pretty close to Seattle. In my spare time and my free time, I enjoy sketching, and I play volleyball for a club team and for my school team. So one question that you guys might have is, why did I choose to research machine translation? So when my research instructor was going over machine learning applications, one specific topic that stood out to me was natural language processing. Because I just thought intuitively it was very interesting to learn about. And for those of you that don't know, natural language processing, or NLP, is a subfield of AI, artificial intelligence, and the goal of natural language processing is to give computers the ability to understand language like us humans can. Examples of NLP tasks can include speech to text or voice recognition, so things like Alexa or Siri or Bixby. Other NLP tasks can include sentiment analysis, which analyzes things like attitude, emotion, or sarcasm from text. And NLP can also include news article generation, text summarization, which basically summarizes large chunks of text, and of course, machine translation. After committing to natural language processing, I had to choose a specific task within the NLP category. At school, I'd been taking Spanish classes for the past 4 years, and at home, my family uses Chinese, so I was already really familiar with Google Translate and other online translating tools. A lot of the time when I opened Google Translate, I was really curious about how Google Translate worked. Was it like a word-to-word translation? Did they kind of copy translated phrases from other people? Were there very specific examples that they just kind of followed? And when my instructor brought up machine translation in class, I kind of figured out, oh, this would be a really cool time for me to research more about it. Now, what specifically is machine translation? Just like the name suggests, machine translation is the automatic translation of text or speech from your source language to your target language. Translation isn't just replacing one word with another, otherwise you would notice that there's a lot of errors that would come across when you're trying to read the translated text or understand the translated text. But machine translation is really trying to accurately represent the meaning and sentiment of the text in the source language and put it into the desired target language. When I first started this research project, I was kind of just learning about, different machine learning methods and applications. In class, we talked about things like robotics, and we talked about image detection, and we talked about even predicting and detecting medical diseases. So obviously there was a huge range of information for us to cover. But then I narrowed down my research into machine translation, and I had to start reading similar research papers. So when I was doing this, I did a really deep dive into machine translation, I'd say, and I was reading about the history of machine translation. I learned about the most popular and common mechanism, structure, architecture, and methods for general machine translation. And of course, I read about the most common errors and difficulties and challenges that many machine translation programs encountered. Simultaneously, I got a much better feel for what the research paper was supposed to look like regarding the format of the paper, the language that researchers often use, and of course, the overall structure of the paper. Finally, I devised my own research experiment and conducted it. So I was comparing online machine translation models when translating difficult phrases between two languages and comparing the performance of those models with each other. Now, of course, I encountered a couple challenges when I was doing my research. So first and foremost, I had very little knowledge about machine learning, and I knew even less about machine translation, which was a pretty niche aspect of machine learning. The extent of my machine learning knowledge stemmed from what I had learned in my online APCSA classes at school, which were, they were online, they were virtual classes, so obviously I couldn't learn as much. And, I had watched the occasional YouTube video and read the news article, and I had, conversations with other, programming friends of mine. But I still didn't know that much. So when I started my research, there were a lot of new concepts and terminology that I had no idea what they were. So I had to learn them, otherwise I wouldn't know what I was reading. So because of that, research papers would take me 2 or 3 times as long as they normally would, because I was constantly Googling, annotating, and summarizing what I learned, to the point where basically each paper that I read, each research paper that I read, was accompanied with 2 to 3 pages of handwritten notes. But eventually you keep reading and the same term appears twice, and oh, I had already read about this concept in another paper, I already know what it's talking about. And my research process has suddenly streamlined into a much smoother, comprehensible process. Second, I was pretty new to writing research papers. Most of my writing experiences were related to essay style or argumentative or informational writing, but I had no experience with research papers. When I first opened up Google Docs and when I first started writing my actual introduction and related works for my paper, I had basically no idea where to start or where to write anything. So, I looked at other papers. I learned the language and tone that they used, and I learned what an introduction was supposed to do, what the purposes of a related works were for. And that was a great help to me. I had begun to build targets in my mind of what I wanted my reader to understand after reading my introduction, after reading my related works. And I had kind of a general idea of the type of tone, the type of voice that I was supposed to use. And eventually, after quite a couple trash drafts, after quite a couple huge edits and huge revisions, I had grinded out a pretty solid introduction and related works. Finally, of course, the experiment itself was another challenge. I decided to program my own experiment, and that meant that I had to use outside resources and I had to use programming methods that I had never used before. My program would, of course, keep crashing and giving me errors, and hours of staring at the code and trying to figure out what was wrong just didn't help. And then eventually I turned online and, I found the right article, I found the right YouTube video, and suddenly everything fell into place. The models that I was using finally compiled properly and they ran properly, and the test phrases that I was translating actually translated correctly or, sometimes incorrectly. And it was great. Everything just worked. My biggest takeaway from this research project is that some things will be long and slow and hard to learn. When learning something new, you have to start from the very beginning, which includes, going over very fundamental topics and ideas, even if they feel like a huge setback from what you're actually trying to go to. But you have to understand what those are talking about until you're able to move on to learning the newer methods and ideas, the more complicated concepts. And then eventually you graduate to learning about the most recent updates and the new advancements. If the subject that you're learning about is completely foreign to you, then of course it'll take a long time to understand. And even if the process is long and painful, sometimes there simply are no shortcuts. The easy way is never right, and the right way is never easy. So what do I plan to do with the knowledge and skills that I've gained from this? Once I finish writing my paper, I don't think I'll be able to go back to before. I personally have found machine translation to be a really interesting concept, and a lot of the progress and knowledge in this very rich aspect of AI, I think has been very interesting to me. So I think I'll keep reading papers or news articles on NLP tasks and achievements, especially, like the more recent updates. And especially since I've already become kind of accustomed to this kind of very technological, very kind of dry language, I have, a pretty huge head start. Next year, in my senior year, of course, I'll have to write quite a couple of research papers. So, I'll be able to use the methods and resources that I've learned from this project. I'll keep referencing the resources that I found, and of course, apply the techniques and writing skills I've learned while writing these papers. And of course, in my CS class next year, I'll be able to use the programming skills I've learned and other general machine learning information, like the architecture or methods or just general machine learning information in whatever projects that I have in class. And that's all I have for you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.